Drone detection is being deployed over San Mateo County. The aim is to keep an eye on security at critical facilities. It's the next pilot phase for San Mateo County's Smart Lab. It means creating a smart region where technologies don't know city borders. Joining us today is the director of SMC Labs, Ulysses Vinson. So let's start out with talking about what is SMC Smart Lab.
SMC Labs is a new initiative that creates a smart region initiative. Most people think of smart city initiatives, but we're looking at a smart region initiative where we're looking to see how we can foster innovation that traverses the borders of each city in our county.
We have heard smart cities. In all my research, I could find we're the first to say smart region. So why is it important to make these city borders invisible, so to say, with this technology?
I would say because if you look at the problems that we face living here in the Bay Area, if you take two, one being affordable housing, two, mobility, or environmental issues, these are things that are not necessarily unique to any individual city. So we're trying to look at a cohesive way of how do we tackle these types of problems that we deal with on a regular basis. And so we're looking at how do we take this innovation that's in this space and how do we scale it into all these different cities where we don't have an issue where we're duplicating efforts, where we can say what happens in Redwood City and what we install in East Palo Alto, we can do the exact same thing in say, Millbrae.
Okay, can you give us an example of some of these projects?
So we tried to look at, we probably created a matrix, if you would, where, you put things that, something that, a use case that could be in the environmental space, or public safety, or economic development. So we looked at some of the low-hanging fruit, and air quality was like a big one because of because of all the wildfires that we've had in the last year or two. So that is a concern, not with someone that just lives in Millbrae, but it's a concern for everyone that lives in the area. So we understood the nature of, what kind of data are we getting back? And so we realized that the county as a whole needs more localized data that's meaningful because of all the microclimates that we have as relates to monitoring air quality in our county. So that's why we're looking at it from a way where everyone can benefit from this new technology. Beside, not looking at the individual resources of each city, but looking at it collectively.
So you're taking businesses who are creating these technologies, governments and the private sector that are using these technologies, as far as the information and knowledge you can tap from the universities that we have here, kind of putting them all together in one think tank and coming out with ideas that will be helpful for everyone.
Yeah, so we kind of created this technology sandbox, if you would, where we invite anyone who has really good ideas, where we can tackle these issues together. The key was to have this type of sandbox, and we started in Redwood City as one of two innovation zones, where we're looking at air quality monitoring, we're looking at smart parking initiatives, how do we park electric vehicles, because we know that there's going to be an increase in that. How do we deal with all kinds of things related to smart street lights, and smart irrigation. So we wanted to kind of create this sandbox and invite people who have very many talents and see how we test it before we look at, making big capital outlays on stuff until it's proven.
So you've got your think tank, you've got your sandbox, and when you come up with something that, okay, we can test it now, you also have innovation zones.
Yeah, so we have an innovation zone in Redwood City and one in East Palo Alto. And the reason why we wanted to have kind of like a showpiece where we can say, let's start here, let's start somewhere. We have a very large county with 455 square miles to cover. But we thought, let's just pick two zones where we're kind of tinkering with many different little use cases as it relates to smart city initiatives. And the goal is to spread this, if it works, and if it doesn't work, it's not like we spend any money on it. But we want to make sure that we're on the cutting edge of the new technology, that we're not behind the curve that government typically has been in the past. And we want to make sure that we have the infrastructure and get the buy-in from the community as well, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's our schools, whether it's our churches, and of course our tech companies that are located here in San Mateo County, and we reach out to them as well as partners.
How's it been so far? Is everybody excited about this?
I think it's been a lot of fun, honestly. I think when people hear that we have this little lab and it's sponsored by, say, like a government, I think people are pretty, they're pretty excited. They think it's pretty cool stuff. But for me, I like the engagement that it has. I like to be able to go to a county agency and ask them, what problems are you having in your department? And maybe we have a technology solution that can help you solve that problem without a lot of resources here.
And is that happening, or are, say, city governments or coming to you and saying, hey, we got this problem, can you help us?
Yeah, I think, once we got this lab up and running, which has only been 1 year, we just celebrated our 1 year anniversary in May.
Pretty impressive.
We kicked off an IoT World Conference here. It's the second of two of the conferences. And we're really excited. And a lot of people were waiting to hear how was our 1 year experience has been, and what are some of the challenges? What are some of the opportunities that we have? We had a lot of challenges. I mean, we test technologies because it's all new. Some work better than others, which is great. We can test it, and if it doesn't work, then we can move on. But I think it's important that when we talk to agencies that we're looking for real problems. We're not looking just to do technology for the sake of technology. We're really looking for problems that we can all kind of solve together in our little sandbox and see if we can, do something about it. And, air quality is a big one because of the record heats and because of the wildfires. It's something that we thought it was the low-hanging fruit that we can kind of start out with as it relates to trying to explain what Internet of Things means, and how you have these little devices talking to each other and giving us this very, very important data where we can use that data to see how we can improve government efficiency and ultimately improving the quality of life for people.
The thing that we're calling a smart region, it sounds brilliant to me upon looking into it and researching it, because we have so many cities and school districts and universities, and we don't want to reinvent the wheel if somebody has a solution to a problem. But San Mateo has other unique problems, or a unique situation, I should say, in that we don't have a large leading city. And so we need something like this to incorporate, to get all the cities together.
That's right. We have 20 cities in a large unincorporated area that covers 455 square miles, like I said before. But also we have the coastal side where it's very rural, agricultural, very sparse, and you have the bay side where you have your tech companies, you have your pharmaceutical firms, more dense houses with more bigger downtowns. But even that collectively can't compete with, San Jose to the south or San Francisco to the north. So I think that if we look at ourselves as a region with those two anchors, I think we can be more resourceful as it relates to innovation in the region.
Now I'm going to come full circle, Ulysses, and talk about the drone detection that we spoke of earlier. What's happening with that? How are you using this?
Yeah, so it was one of these cool things that we came up, that was some discussion within the lab about new technologies that we were seeing. And of course, county, we have facilities that are very important, that are mission critical, that we want to protect. And particularly, we want to be able to protect the airspace above that. We definitely have to, we're mindful to protect airports, as it relates to drone use. We're mindful to protect our coastlines and things like that. But what about our mission critical facilities, if you would? So we were starting to look at what is the activity of drone use in our county? How are they being using it? We read about there's an explosion of hobbyists using drones. I kind of relate that to when I was a kid, when I used to fly, remote control airplanes. It's kind of similar, which was a lot of fun. But here you have these drones that people are using for recreational purposes, but we want to make sure that they're using it for recreational purposes. We don't want to be caught off guard with any malicious intent of any flight patterns that are around our county.
Could you give me an example of some malicious intent? You had mentioned, these drones fly over the jails. They fly over other critical facilities. What other kind of malicious intent could there be?
We can only go by what we've seen, and it's funny. We started testing.
So this is just an observation.
This was an observation. There were a couple of things that happened in the Bay Area where we saw some drone activity above our stadiums, for an example. So down in Santa Clara at the 49ers game, there was a person that was flying above the stadium. Same thing in AT&T Park in San Francisco. Now, it was malicious in that somebody was dropping, not contraband or anything, but they were dropping anti-media literature into the crowd. The crowd didn't know it. It was harmless at the end of the day, but it was illegal. So even though that was malicious intent, nobody was harmed, and that was a stadium with thousands and thousands of people. So you have to take that very seriously. The federal government takes care of our airports. But what about our jails? What about our water facilities, that you can tap into, where we control drinking water? Or even our parks. We consider all of our acres of beautiful land here in the county as mission critical, as people use our parks and go to the hospitals and things like that. So we wanted to make sure what kind of activity is flying in and around, particularly the jails or youth detention centers. And so we started testing it, and what we found, the data shows, is that there is a lot of, we found a lot of flight patterns that were in and around those types of facilities.
Really?
Yeah. Now, we don't have any instance of any malicious intent, but at least now we have data that it does exist.
Okay. Okay. Well, particularly with drones, but with any new technology, it explodes and it can get out of hand before policymakers or lawmakers know what's happening. Not that any new laws need to be implemented, but I mean we need to figure out the potential for these new technologies, and this is a way to do it, to observe.
Absolutely. When we hear about drones being used for many different purposes, right? Whether it's for product delivery, as Amazon has announced this week that they're doing, where they're testing their own drone design, where they're going to be able to do deliveries from a drone 15 miles away. Eventually that will impact our county as well. So as they embark on taking care of their operations of what they do in business, we have to make sure that we protect our county facilities just the same. And so that's why we think it's important to have data in our hands that shows what type of drones, what kind of drones, how big they are, where they're flying, at what hours. This is all relevant data that we didn't have before. Now, again, we're very lucky. We haven't had any problems in and around our mission critical facilities. But we don't want to wait until something does. And so that's why we want to have that data, so when the policymakers need it to make decisions on where do we go with drone usage in our county, they will have the data to be able to make those types of decisions.
I have one last question for you, Ulysses. This is obviously something that's very exciting. There's a lot of new stuff coming and going all the time. What is your vision for SMC Smart Labs?
We're having a really good time, by the way. It's not quite often in government where you have this much fun, but we are. We get to talk to the community. We get to hear about the problems that they're having. We get to talk to our county agencies and see what type of problems they're having. We talk to our community centers. We talk to everyone. And we look at technology is so amazing, and we live in Silicon Valley. And why can't we take all this greatness in technology and make it work better for city government, as well as improving the quality of life for people? And most importantly, we're hoping that SMC Labs will kind of be that center of excellence, if you would, where it can be a resource where if people can look at if they need some type of use case or solution, and maybe something that we may have played with in our sandbox, and we're willing to share that information.
Thank you so very much for giving us your help and your time and your information today, Ulysses Vinson.
Thank you for having me.
SMC Labs is keeping track, and they're going to bring us more and more information on our housing difficulty, our environmental problems, and they'll have fixes for them too. This is the very foundation of what they're talking about, creating a smart region. I'm Janet Yee. Thanks for watching Take Notice. Have a safe day.